Hello everyone, my name is Stanley St. Rose, and today we're going to be talking about The First Year of My Life, written by Muriel. Now, before I go into summary analysis of this work, please remember to leave a like, subscribe, and or comment so that the channel can continue to grow. Now, in this work, we get introduced to a baby, and right from the get-go, the baby tells us that she's omniscient and that she's living in a horrible time in human history, and it's the end of World War One. And this baby, she tells us that she's omniscient, and then she goes through a period of time within this work telling us that this is true. She does this thing when people are trying to convince you of something, they give you a statistic, they give you a fact, and so this baby goes, scientists are working on proving this, that all babies are omniscient when they're born, and they can see every situation that's happening around the world, or have this all-knowing knowledge. And the baby tells us that, I can see all of this. Scientists are about to prove all of this, and that the poets already know about this, the writers, the great thinkers, the philosophers already know about this information, that babies are omniscient. And the baby tells us that, there are certain people that hold on to some parts of this omniscient viewpoint for some parts of their lives, or I guess some sages basically. This baby goes into it, and the baby, she even throws out Harvard at us, saying I'm sure that Harvard's already working on proving this, so it's a done deal. Babies are born omniscient, no need to question it, no need to worry about the truth of this. So the essay, the short story here kind of has to do this, because what we're going to be discussing within this work, it's heavy stuff, and in order for us to, look at it from a point of view of seriousness, we need to believe that somewhat babies are omniscient. So we just gotta accept that fact that we're all born omniscient, and then as we grow up, we just lose it. So we just got to believe the baby that she's omniscient, she can see all of this, and this is something that's happening in our world, in the real world, because again, we're talking about World War One here and the events that took place in World War One. So we got to believe our narrator that she has this pretty much God power, this heavenly power, that she's omniscient and she can see, she can tune in. She pretty much talks about her seeing the world like a television, like a television. She's pretty much switching channels and looking at what people like Virginia Woolf, what they're doing, and what famous authors and writers are doing, and what's happening in Russia or in Europe, and she just can see all things. And so the story goes on, and this baby, she gets past she brushes past her whole omniscience and how it's reality, after throwing Harvard at us. And then she goes into her view of the world, what's going on, and how horrific World War One is. And she talks about the people who are dying and how she's tuning in to the people who are dying in World War, and how some people are living their lives quite normally and some people are not. And for me, in terms of analysis, this is very significant, because one thing that this short story shows us is that even during World War One, or during any time of conflict on Earth, people are still living their lives. During World War One, you would think that the whole world stood still while the battles were going on, but no. People during World War One, people were still getting married, people were still gossiping, people were still going to the grocery store, and then in other cities, in other parts of the world, men were losing their lives, sons and fathers were dying, and uncles were dying, and members of families, of different families around the world, were being shred apart, and hundreds of miles away, or maybe a couple of miles away, or maybe in the other side of the city, people are going to work and eating and drinking and taking care of babies because that's life. I think we tend to think that life is this, one after the other kind of thing. Like, when the world's at peace, everyone's at peace. Or when I'm at peace, everyone's at peace. But no, I mean, even right now, as you're watching this video, there's probably a war going on somewhere in the world. There's a battle going on somewhere. Somewhere somebody's getting married. Somewhere somebody's having a baby. Somewhere somebody's dying. Somewhere somebody's in a hospital bed, and it's all happening simultaneously. And this baby, since she's omniscient, she's seeing all of it at once. I mean, we as humans, oftentimes we process things one at a time. Good news comes and we process it. Bad news comes and we process it. But we never think about taking it all in at once. And I think, from my perspective, the way that this baby is looking at the world, it's very significant because to me, reading about it from this baby's perspective, it's almost like it's a mess. It's a mess of, it's like a pot of good and bad and evil and horrific and nasty and gore, and she's like, it's like a massive soup or gumbo that's just in your face. And it's kind of like funny to me, at least, because the baby can't like change her own diaper or feed itself, or she's being nursed by her mother. She can't even smile, or she won't smile, and yet she's having these complex ideas, complex thoughts, and she's thinking to herself, why are these humans not doing anything to change all of this? And the baby's kind of like taking it upon herself to like save her strength, so that she can combat these atrocities and these horrible things that are happening in the world. But the thing is, like, one thing that you, like, in terms of analysis, that she won't be able to do anything about it, because we know that she's going to lose her omniscient ability, the ability to tune in to everything that's happening in the world at once. So the fact that the baby is judging mankind, because the way that we see this work, it's almost like the baby sets herself apart from mankind, and she's kind of like judging mankind, and she is apart from mankind because she's omniscient. I mean, normal human beings don't have that ability. Most of us don't. Most of us, we have a narrow view of life. It's what's in front of me, that's what matters. You deal with what's in front of you, with what's going on in your life. You can't deal with the entire world. I mean, you don't have the shoulders to carry the entire world. So some of the things that are happening in the world, you kind of have, it's sad, but we tune it out and we focus on our daily tasks because that's all we can handle. You only have 24 hours in a day. You can't, I mean, you're not trying to be cruel, but I can't be in my hometown and I can't help everyone or worry about every single thing that's happening in the world because my shoulders are just too small to carry the entire world. And it's kind of comical to me because even though the baby's omniscient, she can't wave her fingers or do anything about it. She just has to like lay there on her back, powerless, and watch. So the fact that the baby throughout the work, like in terms of analysis, again, the fact that the baby is just on her back, watching and observing and judging, it's really funny because you're judging and you're like, why are they not doing anything when you can't do anything yourself? So that's an interesting part of this work. and now I'm judging the baby in this work. Wow. So the work goes on, and the months go by, and the baby keeps getting stronger. The baby's sleeping. The baby is tuning in and out in different things. She's tuning into the lives of politicians and writers and authors and poets. She's seeing how the war is going. She's seeing, how people are going about their lives, and she's judging human beings like they're these two-legged creatures that she depends on, but they're very kind of like she sees them as like these creatures that are not doing what they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing in terms of helping others, in terms of fixing the problems on Earth, she's looking at them, she's talking about them, she's like, I'm going to do something different when she can't. It's kind of like looking at different people underneath a telescope, because the baby, she's present in her own life because she sees her brother playing with a toy gun around her crib, and she's seeing her mother defending her and saying why she's not smiling. She's seeing people, cooing and awing and trying to make her laugh because, again, she's a baby. She hasn't laughed. That's a big part of this work, that the baby doesn't laugh throughout the entire first year of her life, because, of course, she's watching a horrible time in human history take place, and it's very dark. I mean, if I'm watching all the atrocities of World War One, or towards the end of World War One take place, and people dying, and people being slaughtered, and people being shot, and people starving, and people, every single horrible thing that could happen to someone during a war is happening, and this baby who is new to the world, not even 1 year old, is observing all of it. And she wants to do something about it, but she can't. She's powerless. I wouldn't want to smile either. And then she sees all these other people who are taking care of her. They can walk. They can take care of themselves. And they're not doing anything about it. And she finds that very alarming. But at the same time, it kind of makes me, in terms of analysis, it makes me question this baby's omniscience. Because if you're all knowing, if you're omniscient, and you can see all these things take place, you have all this knowledge, you should also know that because the baby recognizes that babies have this power to see these things, and some adults have some ability to have this knowledge as well, but the baby, if she has all this power and this omniscient ability, she should know that most humans can't do anything about it. And it's not that they don't want to, it's mostly because they can't. Because, humans, we have a narrow view of life. We can only deal with things that's right in front of us. And even when we try to step out on the international platform, there's only so much you can do in your lifetime in terms of global change. Maybe you can change your community or your country, but in terms of global change, in terms of a world war, there's only so much one person can do. And the fact that this baby is on her back judging people and societies and communities, and saying why they're not doing something different, why they are not, she's judging war, she's judging humankind, she's judging everything that's taking place, but she's saying, like, why can't we do something here? Why can't they act differently? Or she's looking at how dark war is and all of these things, but at the same time, if you're judging someone, but you can't do anything differently, or you can't the same place they're in, you're in as well. So then, from my perspective at least, I don't think you have the power to judge, because you only have the power to judge when you're not, when you can do something different, or when you can change what they're doing. If you can't do anything to change or anything to improve, you can't really be a great judge. So the baby at the end of the work finally smiles. She smiles, and it's because a politician. There's a quote at the end of the work where a politician says, at the end of the war, that there's been I'm paraphrasing here, but there's a cleansing of the world, a purging of the world, and that's kind of like in terms of analysis, in terms of interpretation, that makes me think, because the quote at the end that makes the baby smile, it talks about purging and cleansing of the world, and that kind of really I find it very alarming, because I guess you can say the world wars were a type of purge, a global purge of people just killing each other. And I mean, today the historians and the politicians will tell you a lot about what caused the wars, and they'll talk about powder kegs and the thirst for power and for progress. But if we look at this simply, the world wars were just a massive purge. It wasn't just soldiers dying. A lot of civilians died. I mean, people were dying left and right. If it's not because of war, it's because of starvation. And there are casualties of war that have nothing to do with the battlefield, because war is something that's tied into everything. It's tied into economy. It's tied into social life. If you didn't die at war, you probably had a friend who died at war, a family member. You probably know somebody who died at war. So everybody has a price to pay in a global war. Not to mention, in terms of global wars, there's always this peace of mind aspect of, if the entire world is at war, who is safe? I mean, the entire world is at war. So where can you hide? Under what rock can you hide? Because you're in a world war. Yeah. So the baby smiles because of the absurdity of the fact that a lot of people had to die for the world to be cleansed. That quote is absurd, and it's comical, because this politician stands up and just says that, the world has been cleansed, the world has been purged, the world is a better place. And I guess it's a good way to look at all the death, I guess, kind of seeing the world as a rebirth that had to take place, and a lot of people had to die, and the baby smiles because of that, because it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I mean, if that's what you can take from a global war, that it's a cleansing, it's a purge, that's really not a good reason to have a global war, just to cleanse the world. It doesn't make any sense to just, all the millions and thousands and all of the casualties, all of the atrocities, all of the horrible things that took place in World War One. That quote, to just say, it was a cleanse, it was a purge, we're going to be better off. To the baby, at least, it's very comical, very absurd, and, and in terms of the story, in terms of what happens next in the story, the people, the baby's mother, the baby's brother, and all the people who, because at the end of the short story, we're actually at the baby's birthday party, and the baby finally smiles because of the quote, and the baby grows up to be normal. And but the way that this work is written, you can make an assumption that she grows up to be a normal human being and she doesn't, remain omniscient. And that's how the short story ends. And again, I'm gonna judge the baby. I'm gonna judge the baby. And what I want to say about this baby is that this baby has no right to judge, because although she's omniscient, she can't do anything about it. Although she can see all these things take place, she's a baby. She needs someone to change her, someone to feed her. And although she's looking at the human race and judging the human race, she is a part of the human race. And although she's like saying, why isn't somebody doing something about this? She can't do anything about it. So it's this thing of, you have this omniscient judge that has literally a god, a power of a god, but this judge can't do anything different. This judge is judging, but this judge isn't at all different from the people, the person that the judge is judging, if that makes any sense. And, in the end, the baby will lose its omniscience, or its ability to see everything, and at that point, you're just like every other human being. The one thing that made you different as a baby, when you grow up, you become a normal human being, because the baby even tells us, that you kind of, when you grow up, you have to conform to society and make your abilities practical. If you're an omniscient adult and you can see everything, you can know everything, I guess there's a lot of things you could use that for, but at the same time, having all this knowledge, having ultimate knowledge, I don't think is a gift in the end, because, again, there's two things that make someone smart and successful. It's not just being smart or having knowledge or power. You have to use it within a timely manner. Time and knowledge go hand in hand. You can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you can't act swiftly and on time, that knowledge become useless. Because humans, we can only live for so long. If you live to be 100 years old, most people, by the time you reach your 70s, your years of high productivity, they're done. Yes, we're living past our 70s, and yes, there are a lot of successful 70-year-olds and 80-year-olds. I know people bring up, oh, this man is in his 90s and he's super successful. That's great. But for most, and generally speaking, in the grand scheme of things, for most people that have ever lived, your years of high productivity are not in your 70s. You're looking at your 20s to 50s. Because people are living longer now. That's the time you have to do something. When you look at things like this, it really makes you think, because knowledge is great, but also knowledge, in order for it to be useful, in order for it to be something that can be successful, it has to be used in a timely manner. And so this baby's knowledge, although her analysis of human life, her analysis of the human world is quite significant, at the same time, I'm going to judge her here. I think her omniscience, there's value in it because she shows us her point of view, her perspective. But in terms of it being useful, a useful power, an omniscient power, it's an omniscient power that babies have that we really can't do anything with, because you lose it, and when we could have used it, you couldn't talk, or you were a baby. So that power for the baby, I guess it was useful, but for mankind it wasn't useful. And her idea of getting stronger so she can change the world, it won't work because her power is gone. And she has a God power that really can't change anything. And I'm going to say this again because she's a baby. So that's the work. That's what happens within it. She does smile at the end because of the quote. And I think that's enough judging babies for today. Please remember to leave a like, subscribe, and or comment, guys. And I'll see you guys in the next video. And, stop judging babies. I mean, we gotta judge some babies.